the Johnnie Mine and the Carlton Tunnel and the mine that Tabor has made famous, which was, I can't think of the name right off the bat. Dad worked for it, worked in it, I should say. And the grocery company that supplied the miners in a town that was known as Stumptown, which was 7 miles above Leadville. And I still remember as a child, they used to have come up with the grocery wagon to a transfer point and then have to transfer all the groceries into sleds. And at times the storms would be so bad that we'd go from week to at least 2 to 3 weeks without food. And we always made it a point to see that we always had potatoes. And many a times that's all we've had, was just potatoes and sometimes potato peelings. But my dad was one of the aggressive type men that I would say aggressive to an extent, and a thief to another extent, because whenever they would find the gold vein, they would sneak down after mine hours, down the ladders to go to this vein and dig this gold, these samples out of the vein, and use what they call the mortar and temple to pound this gold out of it. And when I was a kid, I remember Dad washing this gold, and they took it down to Leadville to Mandy, which is now a millionaire, which he has died, but his kin are reaping the harvest of his thievery. He would charge him 50% to smelt that gold down for him and sell it for him. But the thing that sticks in my mind upmost was this St. Louis tunnel, that when we were kids, we used to go up quite a lot, and we'd push after hours in the evening after school and push these cars in and out and ride these cars that brought out the waste material from these tunnels, this particular tunnel, which is St. Louis Tunnel. But today, the Fanny Rollin, the Dolly B, the Resurrection, if you look back in the Colorado history, they have produced more gold and silver than more mines in the state of Colorado. There's one mine in particular, the Silver Dollar, that is known, and the history has been written on it, of Tabor. He told, what is her name? I can't think of her name. That died. Baby Doe, to never give up. And Dad worked in that mine, and he was the biggest hearted man that ever was up in the state of Colorado, up in the Leadville, not the state of Colorado, Leadville, that helped every miner that grub staked him and got him on his way. And here, back in '68, I took a ride with Marie and the family known as McGannons. And we went up from Leadville to Stumptown. There's a few markers left yet. And in this one particular old-fashioned shack or cabin, is whatever you want to call it, I got to digging around on the walls, because what they did, when they put the wallpaper up, they backed the wallpaper with ordinary papers, and the old papers stated dates on the old papers I ran into was back to 1876, and you could see the marks, well, I can't really call it the right name. I wish I knew what it was. Where they pounded out the gold it was the old racket of survival. You just couldn't live on the wages they paid you in Leadville, so you had to be a hijacker. And you used to go down these ladders, and they called them the escape ladders then. And I still remember the story my dad has often repeated several times. They called it the Tommy Knocker. The shaft cage, or the cage that used to go down the shaft, would be down, we'd say, in level 1, and they'd get the signal, the engineer would get the signal of a 3 or 4 signal to drop it down to 3rd or 4th level, and there'd be never anybody down there. And Dad says many a times they were in there, into these different drifts, digging, that the cribbing, which would, to our way of saying it, would be shoring, but they called it cribbing, would start giving away. And Dad was trapped once, which was never serious because he was able to come out. But they were constantly wet, and they often wondered why a miner would make a trip to the saloon before he come home for his supper. The reason for that was that they were so cold, and they would always like to have 2 or 3 drinks of hard liquor to kind of make their blood circulate. And Dad has told many stories. And I'll never forget one time I went with my dad, and I was just a little tot at the time, down the Zeitz bar in Leadville. And I was set up on the bar, and Dad set up everybody at the bar, and they went down to the street as known as the red light district, which we all know what the red light district was. And the whores there reaped 90% of the hard rock miners' money.
Could you tell me, Johnny, what was your father paid in those days?
I think Dad has often mentioned that it wasn't over $1 a day.
And could you tell me about the living conditions that you had there in your home?
Very poor, and it was on a charge basis.
Oh, at the company store?
No, there was no company store. This Hartzeitz grocery company used to come up from Leadville. They'd take your orders this week, and they'd deliver next week. And then they would check with the company, see how long you've been with the company, and they would allow you in proportion of the time you were with the company. You could never go over $50 a month at the very, very most, regardless of the size of the family you had.
Well, what was the size of your family?
There was 6 brothers and 4 sisters.
So how much money would they allow you?
We were allowed $50 a month.
$50 a month.
And I lost my sister, which her name was Violet, and at that time it was known as Dropsy. What it is today, I don't know. And she was the sister that was between Leo and I, and there was Violet. She died of a death there, and she died in my mother's arms when she was feeding her potato soup.
How about the doctors there? Did you have...
There was none. There was
where
no
would
doctor.
you have to go to get a doctor?
Clean down Leadville, which was better than 7 miles.
7 miles to Leadville.
There was no such a thing as first aid or anything else.
What would your mother do, like first aid and first aid?
Nothing. She relied on her neighbor as a midwife in birth.
Yeah.
Yes. They did that constantly. I remember one time there was a woman was going to give birth to a child, and couldn't figure out why they had the water boiling and the hot towels going. And all of a sudden I heard something screaming. I asked my mom what was that, and she would never tell me what it was.
How old was your father when he died, Johnny?
He died of, he often bragged that he buried all his old friends for minus consumption. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Reamer, which is an old friend of ours and a good friend of ours, had him as a patient here in Denver, and he said he died of silicosis.
Oh, is that what they called that, like miner's consumption? Is that the same thing as silicosis?
Yes,
And
it was
this-
minus consumption, yes.
And this is the lead mines, or did you say?
Yes, lead and silver
lead and silver
and gold. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's rock. It's not the same thing as coal.
No.
Like black lung.
No. This was, I remember when Dad, just in his, at St. Anthony Hospital, and he would cough, he would actually cough up lung chunks at the time he died.
Well, would you tell me about how you went to school? And just go on about how your children went to school.
We had one big room, and being, as you know, 6 brothers, clothes was handed down each one. If the weather was too cold, the boys in the oldest grades got to go to school, and the other ones had to stay home. But we had one room schoolhouse, and each row of seats was 1st, 2nd, and 3rd and 4th grade. And this teacher would have to come up in Leadville, and sometimes we never had class. During the summertime, though, we used to have our fun.
Did you plant a garden to?
No, we knew
get
nothing
you
of
over?
gardens. We always
Didn't have
no.
anything like that to tide you over.
No, for extra meat, we used to take, I can still remember as a child, my dad used to do it. He'd take an old bed spring and prop it up with a rope and feed what breadcrumbs we could possibly spare, put it on this bed spring and wait for the birds to come under, and then they'd pull the stick and this bed spring would fall down, and then us kids would go out and smack the birds on the head so we'd kill them. And then we used to have the chore of feathering these birds, and I never did have to clean them, but we used to have chicken. That was our chicken.
That was the chicken. What kind of birds did you have?
Sparrows.
Oh.
And in the wintertime, for us kids, for fun, we used to have and take a piece of tin, and we'd bend up the front, and where the snow was in high slopes, we used to ride that down in the wintertime. That was the only sports. But I do remember one guy, his name was Toby. Where he come from, I don't remember because I was too young, but they used to always have a Christmas party for us. And whenever the tree wasn't well formed, he used to always drill holes into the trunk of the tree and put these branches in. And all the ornaments that was on this tree was made by the kids in the school. I still remember the time World War I broke. We used to take our inkwells out that was in our desks, and we'd cut strips. They were telling us that these little strips and these little pieces we were cutting up was pillows for the soldiers over in France.
Well, you told earlier about your father going down into the mines but I wasn't paying very much.
Hijacking.
Yeah.
Now,
what
today
does that
it's known
mean?
as hijacking.
Yeah, what does
Stealing
that?
the gold
How
so we
could he
could make
do
extra
that?
money. Well, they knew where the vein was, and there used to be 3 or 4 of them, and it was in a group, in a clique. And then my dad, to this day, I could take you to Leadville and show you where our house was. That house was all tunneled because they figured my dad still had some gold stashed underneath there. They used to pound it out. No, I wish they did. They used to pound it out and take it down to this assayer, which is known as Mandel. And he used to charge him 50% to torque this gold out, and then he'd sell it for him.
Was your father sick in the days that he was mining there? Was he?
No, we were lucky. Dad was quite hardy. He was a big boozer. He loved his whiskey, and I contribute that to keep him in good shape until old age got the best of him.
And you figure he died with
He did die.
silicosis.
Yes, that's Dr. Reamer diagnosed. That's what he died with.
And What else did you ever go down into the mines, or did you ever look
No.
around and see?
I've seen them
what-
go down, and I've seen when they had a cave in, and I've watched the men go down on what they call today is known as bosun chairs. But there, it was just a swing, and they'd send them down in cables, try to find these men. And when these pumps would quit and flood the different levels, that they'd drown out, and I often wondered how they'd ever get them out. And I also remember seeing them go down with grappling hooks. And I remember one case, they brought up a man that they finally caught and brought him up out of 15. And to this day, I have a relative that's up in the mines at Central City. They closed the mine after all those 15 men were killed in there through cave-ins.
And
Safety was the second
thing best making a living for the
safety meant
miners.
nothing to them.
No.
They wanted production. The men's safety meant nothing to them.
Well, it's like we had the thing in Farmington, West Virginia with the 78 men.
Similar to that.
It is. When you go down into a hole, you never know if you're going to come up the next, after the shift is over.
Oh, and two, I remember Dad doing it at home. After he had a few shots, come home half swacked, have his supper, he would clean out his carbide lamp. That's the only thing they had down. They had carbide. And whenever the carbide lamp would start flickering, that meant they had bad air. They would try to get out, and a lot of them never did get out.
How would he know that?
The flicker
in the lamp?
flicker of your lamp would definitely tell you that the good air was being gotten, or air in itself proper was being used up, dissipated, and they would try to make it over to out through the level to the cage to come up, and a lot of them never made it.
And all you had to eat was just that bit that what did he make average a week, did you think?
I would say, judging the size family, $7 to $10 a week was a tall wage. Mm-hmm. Plus, my dad and a few more lived a little better because they did what is known today as hijacking.
Can you remember, what year was that now, Johnny?
I am 61 now, and I left Leadville when I was 7, and my brothers have related a lot of stories to me. So 7 from 61 would make it, 44 years ago. Better than that.
4 years ago, yeah.
Better,
A little
yeah.
better, yeah. And your mother was very good about fixing the foods that she could
Very
have.
much,
like,
whatever she could have, yes. Uh-huh.
And I'm interested in the potato peelings. How would you fix that? They're
She'd
they're
boil 'em.
better than the potato themselves.
Right.
aren't they?
She'd boil them to me, it seemed like a mush. And we'd have that. We wouldn't have bread, but we had that. And really, the only time we got meat, if Dad was able to, he did shoot rabbits, and he did shoot deer. That's the only time we actually got meat.
Yeah. And your father lived until how old did you say?
Dad lived to,
How old was he when he died?
he was in his easy in his 65s.
He should have lived much longer, Johnny.
My mother died when she was 49.
And Johnny, you are Johnnie
Negri.
Negri, and you want some?
Talking too close.
And
I just wanted to add something here.
you say something, Bart.
No, I was just, I didn't want to interrupt this,
It's all right.
but this was towards the end
Say something.
of the big mining period of the boom. How would that compare, say, to the this was the end of mining, of metal mining in this area. Is that correct, or how does that fit in?
Well, Bart, the price of silver went to pot. Basically, Leadville was known as a silver mining country, and gold was naturally what they looked for. But when the price of silver went to pot, and the big companies wouldn't keep up their mines, being that the price of silver went to pot, a lot of the fathers had enough sense to try to think to keep their children or their boys out of the mines. But today, even right now, you can go up there at these big dumps that they call it low-grade ore that is out of those, that's on those dumps, are being reworked today. They're really working them mines, them dumps over like everything down there now, buddy. And 90% of what's up there now and what is in the mines is not the cousin jacks, which was the English, the Polacks, the Austrians, all the foreign element. What you have up there now, 99% is the Spanish element, the Chicano or the Spanish, whatever you want to call it. The others won't work them. It is beautiful country up there.
How far is it from Denver?
Oh,
And in Trinidad,
in miles, I can't actually say. I should know because I traveled it a lot. But it's over Loveland Pass, through Dillon, and then on up to Climax, and from Climax right into Leadville. The government has done an awful lot of work up there lately in what they call the Turquoise Lake area to facilitate more water for the farmers in the lower part of the country.
Well, do you get down there very often now?
I go through there quite often, yes.
There's no mining going on.
Mining is still going on.
What are their? Do you know anything about their facilities today? Or
It has improved quite a bit.
Are they in a union?
I believe
the
they
workers in
are.
a
I do
union?
believe they are, yes.
And
Very much.
and what union would that be in? Do you know?
Oh,
Would it be
I
in-
believe the United Mine Workers, if I'm not mistaken.
United Mine Workers.
Yeah.
Do you know anybody that any names or addresses of people that you know there, Johnny, that you could give me?
The one
People
that
that you could write to and get a little more information.
Yes, I would say your best bet is to write to the postmaster at Leadville, Colorado, and by the way, he is Spanish.
Spanish, and what
Yes.
is his name?
I don't remember if it's
Just say
Martinez or Martez. Mm-hmm. But I know that he could give you all the information you want.
And just say Postmaster Trinidad.
Postmaster at Leadville.
Leadville.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Leadville.
Yeah. You talk about Trinidad. Going down through Trinidad, they got a great big plaque up there of the time that coal mine went down. I imagine you know about it. That in commemoration of the boys or the men that died in that coal mine disaster.
I've heard about it. But
Yeah, it sits in between Walsenburg and Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
And they got a sign, I would say the size of it is 5 by 8 wide.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a memory of the miners that died in this mine mishap. The next time I go down in there, I'd like to take the dates down there because it has it down, right on there.
yeah, wouldn't be
But-
interesting to know.
It would, it really, you should see that.
Did your father live most of his life there?
No, Dad came from Austria and went to South America first. Then from South America, he went to Central City, and they paid as high as $10 a day to sleep in the barn because there was no motels, no hotels, or nothing to live in. Then through a few friends of his, they said that the conditions, working conditions and living conditions were better in Leadville. So he went to Leadville. And that's...
What year was this, Johnny?
Oh, gosh, Bart, no. I'd have to take Frank's age, which he's... Was he leave 64? Frank is about 68. So I would say approximately 68 years back. And my mother, well, let's see, she gave birth to my oldest brother, which was in Austria, and she never brought him here till they were here established. Then he came. Frank was born here, and he was born in Leadville. Chris was born in Leadville. Joe was born in Leadville, or I should say Stumptown. We say Leadville because it's the biggest town, but Stumptown is just a little mining suburb of Leadville. And Leo, Dom, and Violet, and then myself, which is John, and then Mary, then my youngest sister, which is Dorothy. We were all born in Leadville.
Well, do you remember, you were growing up then, do you remember the Ludlow Massacre?
I've heard of it, and I've heard Dad tell about when they sent the militia up, because they went out on strike for more money.
Yes.
They sent the militia up to try to break the strike, and these men would abide by the law at daylight and then sabotage as we know it today at night. And through doing that, they caused enough harassment that the mine owners did go up in their wages.
Well, a lot of children were killed there.
Yes, right.
And the company killed all the little children. And well, Johnny, thank you very much, and I'd like to hear something from
Bill. In your springtime when strike was on, they drove us miners out of doors, out of the houses that the company owned. We pitched our tents up at old Ludlow.
Ludlow, that's the one with the signs.
Turn it off, Ludlow is the one.
I know it's already.
I'll tell you. Because, yeah, they were catching Polacks, Germans, Austrians.
Yeah, but these people mainly Catholic.
99% of the people up there were Catholic. We never had a church.
Well, how the hell did
They'd come up and they were trying to expand. They would start organizing. And
you didn't have a church?
No, the only church we had was down in Leadville. But I'll tell you one thing I'll never forget. Another thing I'll never forget. My mother, I had something go wrong with my legs, and Dr. Rooney theorized it was it rheumatic fever, Dr. Rooney said? Yes. And my mother, believe it or not, God rest her soul, she carried me on her back down to Leadville.
That's what they said when Johnny was little. He was always sickly. It's what the four brothers told me.
I had, and to this day, Reamer says, well, the x-rays I had, I often wonder if you did have rheumatic fever, because you got scars on your lungs. You remember when Frank almost died from the appendix? They took him down there, and the doctor's name, I still remember. Dad called it Jesse McDonald. That is J.C. McDonald. And he has, I don't know, one or two nationality, or not national, but generations. There is a McDonald as a doctor in Denver. But Jesse McDonald was the one that saved my brother Don.
What about your mother carrying you down?
She carried me on her back.
From Stumptown?
From
to...
Stumptown, 7 miles down to Leadville for doctor treatment. All the way down.
What was wrong? Did you say?
I couldn't walk. Something went wrong with my legs. And she never did well. I never did know.
Too lazy.
Yeah, I wish it was. but I still remember having my arms around my mother's neck, and she had me with my legs across this way, and she held me, and she walked me, carried me all the way down. That's a long 7 miles.
What did the doctor do for you? You remember?
Well, really nothing. He gave me some, I still remember it was a powdered pill, or rather a powder in a paper. And I remember him unfolding them, putting it in a water glass, and he had me drink. That's all I could remember.
Maybe it was calcium.
I don't know. I never coughed. I had no coughing. I had nothing, but I could not stand on my legs. And I was the only one of all the family except my sister Violet, which died in my mother's arms when she was feeding her chamomilla tea. That's tea from some herbs, and that was the one that died from dropsy.
Chamomile tea?
Chamomilla.
Chamomilla.
Chamomile.
Yeah, chamomilla tea. And I still remember when I was a little guy, my brother Dom fell in the creek. And my brother Leo ran home all the way to Mom. Says, Mama, Dom fell in the creek. And she ran down, and she's the one that went down waist deep in the water to drag him out. He'd have been a drowned punk.
If Leo see down in the creek today, he'd push him in.
He'd keep them in there. Oh, they dislike each other. It's out of this world.
Okay.
Oh,
No, we say creek.
we say creek and
They say crick.
Creek, yeah. Plain old ditch. It was what it was. It was a ditch.
Best ditch you can have in the world is irrigation ditch.
In West Virginia, they say push.
Who?
Push.
Oh,
Like we
good
want to
guy.
push something, they say push. Push. Push you in the, what they, bushes.
Push her in the bushes.
Push you in the bushes.
Now I wanted to get Johnny onto one more thing here. An old Big Mouth Marie, Big Mouth Buddy, Big Mouth Bell, or Be Quiet. Just a little bit. It's not too significant. But on the religious business, about the church, and then I still don't understand what group the Scotch, are into these places. Scotch immigrants who would be Protestants.
Yeah.
Were these Masons immigrants like Scotch?
Well, yes, I would say they were, Bart. They were, I think the time...
For instance, my friend Jim Allender, his people lived around Trinidad, and they came over as Scotch immigrants. Naturally, they'd be Protestant.
Yeah.
I just wonder if they were Scotch miners
There was every nationality, Bart, you can really think of up there, and naturally the ones that weren't Catholics joined the church right away. Well, they were so ambitious to get as many members, which any organization will try to get, and they were pecking at the Catholics, and my dad just took an exception to the fact, and he hated them so damn bad that that's what he done to that donkey, was cutting those three steps in that donkey's tail. And I'll go a little further on that. I still remember one time my brother-in-law, which is Chris's husband, they had outhouses, and he got so damn mad at him, he went out with the shotgun and just blew the living hell out of that outhouse, and he was in there. It's a wonder he's still alive. He was alive at the time, I should say. But going to the religious aspect of the whole thing, there was no Catholic church up there. In fact, no church
Wasn't
of any
there any
kind.
church in Leadville? There must have been.
No, it's Stumptown. I'm talking about Stumptown. But in Leadville there was, because when I was brought down to Leadville to be baptized,
Yeah.
my dad was crocked.
Yeah,
And when the
said name
priest
on it.
asked him, what name do you want to baptize him? My mother says, Johnnie Negri. And it wound up, the priest put down Eugenio was Genu, that was John. That's wound up with John. So truthfully, my name, my Catholic
Eugene.
baptized name is Eugene.
But the
Eugenio.
priest couldn't say it because he couldn't speak English and the old man
And
was
the old man
drunk,
was
so they named him John.
Bingo, they named me John. And they would come down, I could be born in December, and when the weather broke in June, you went down and got baptized.
Well, did you want to be baptized? Did
Yeah,
you,
well, sure.
or did you
Mother always,
feel that you should be?
Well, they
at that
He was
time,
an infant,
yeah.
honey.
Well, at that time,
How would he know if he wanted to be
Catholics
baptized or
don't
not?
take any chances, honey. They baptize them when they're infants.
Yeah, when they're infants, you don't have a chance.
You don't have a chance, honey.
You're dead
Did the
done.
priest come up to stuff
Never
that?
did.
Then you're
How can he remember all that? He's not. You weren't even just a year older yet.
No, you,
There are some that baptize
Bill,
them
you
when
never
they're
saw a priest. The only time you actually saw a
not
church,
Catholics.
the inside of a church, is when they went to Leadville. And that was very, very, very seldom. Never got to this church. There was a family known as Zadra that stood up as my godmother. They ran a store down in Leadville. And my dad was such a boozer. In other words, he was a good time Charlie. He had a family at home, but that didn't mean nothing. He played hanky-panky in the town of Leadville. Because, like I stated before, when these guys were going down in the mine hijacking this gold, brother, they lived the life of Riley. And these broads down there in Red Light District wanted to get those kind of guys. And my dad played it hot and heavy. It's a known fact that he did.
But is it a known fact by you?
Basically, yes. Mama.
Well,
Well, Johnny would know because he
No,
was
no,
7
no,
years old when
no.
they left.
And my brothers related the story.
7
and then,
years old, so somebody else related it.
Yeah, it's really, on my part, it's a hearsay from my older brothers.
Yeah.
When they have a fire up there, it used to be the water brigade.
It's gonna be nice country.
And this particular saloon that Georgette is his name. That isn't his last name, but Georgette had this saloon, and these guys all patronized him, and naturally they used to put it on the cuff till they got paid at the end of the month. What happened, I don't know, but they had a fire in this place, and my mother is the one that told us this. She says, you should have seen men coming flying out of windows and anything that looked like there was an opening to get out. And all they had was what they call a water brigade. Well, the way we used to get water was out of these little wells that the water used to seep in, and they were trying to bail water up to this joint. Well, hell, that had burned down to nothing. But she says that was one sad day because it took about 3 weeks to even get a halfway building put up for these guys to get their whiskey, because that was the only joint they had in the place. But
You weren't around then, were you, Marie?
I wasn't born yet.
I can still. There's one more thing I can remember, and my mother always cautioned us when we went to get water, because we drank water out of a bucket, and we used to have to bucket it up home because there was naturally no water lines. And in the wintertime, pulling this water out of these,
Is there a well?
like a well, but it was just a hole dug, and there's this water would seep into it. And people dragging out the water, their water buckets would naturally have spillage, for there'd be ice around them. And she'd always caution us not to get on that ice to protect us from falling in. And we used to have, I remember I even carried it myself. It was a board come across this way with a cutout in it with 2 hooks on, and we'd carry 2 buckets of water. That's the way we got the water home.
Like an oxen yoke.
Yeah, that's the way we carried water home. And a bath, that was out of the question. We didn't even know what the hell a bath was. And it still is, she says.
Well, how did you like when you first came home from the mines? time did you take it back?
There was no bats. There was no bats.
No bats, no water.
Get out of that stinky old dirt-smelling clothes. They never changed. Not even on Sunday.
Oh, yeah, on Sunday. They always went to church, didn't they?
No, there was no church bell.
Some mining camps do have churches.
There was none really. There was none up there. When a guy died, they held him till he went down on the grocery wagon to Leadville, and they buried him in the cemetery. He was a Catholic. He was buried in the Catholic cemetery. And if he was not a Catholic, across the road in the non-Catholic cemetery. And it was stuck in back of the saloon. The body was stuck in back of the saloon until, say he died tonight, and the wagon wasn't due up with the groceries for a couple of days. He stayed in back of the saloon.
Well, in the wintertime, they couldn't bury him anyway until the frost down.
Well, no, they dug him. Yep. And I was telling, when the ore cars used to come, that used to be the time we used to have fun.
What?
The ore wagons, the cars that came up to get the ore when the railroad wouldn't run. On the ends of these big runners, they used to have I still remember the damn thing because we'd ride it so we could make the snow fly higher. And the rudders on the snow cars used to be about this wide. And I often wondered why they were on until I asked questions about it. That's in case these horses couldn't hold the load when they're going up the hill. Instead of having the ore car slide back on them, this peg would dig into the ground.
Now, how wide? Now, you measured it.
About, I would say, 5 inches wide.
5 inches?
Oh, yeah, and then it'd come off, and then come into a peg. And we used to hitch a ride on like you see kids, you don't see them now.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we'd get our feet on there so we could make the snow fly, because when the horses were pulling, then it'd naturally throw the snow for us. But when the going was getting tough and these horses were getting tired, they'd stop them for a rest. Well, naturally the wagon, the sleds would slide back a little ways until these pegs would dig right into the ground.
Well, didn't it ever occur to you to take a little of that gum off that damn
It was,
part?
well, I wouldn't say, it isn't smelter stuff. It had to be smelted down, washed out, and then it was in the vein. In other words, buddy, like say for instance, that seam that comes down there, on each side, they saw the vein, but they would take anything around it with the possibility that the vein could break off. And they'd wash all that stuff. Oh, they had ore cars coming down, and the big thrill was when the big snow plows used to come up there. They had these big rotaries. You saw pictures of these rotaries that throw the snow way up and out of the way. Oh, we used to love to watch that. In fact, if we were in school and the train came up to throw snow, we used to get out of school to watch them. They throw snow.
You turned out the schoolroom?
They'd dismiss us from school so we could watch the snow, this great big snow plow throw the snow. And down here at the old tramway building, the tramway powerhouse, right below 14th Street, Bardock, they got one of them down
Johnny,
there.
I forgot to ask you something about like the coal miners and the families in West Virginia that I've talked to. Have always said that I would do anything. I wash clothes, I scrub clothes, I work for people, I scrubbed their floors. I went to the someplace to be a janitor, you know. Even the mothers of the coal miners' children. And I'll never let my child go down in a coal mine. Did your mother and father thought?
That's it. That's why we moved.
Like that?
That's why we moved from Leadville to Denver.
Moved that way.
Yeah.
Because the oldest boys were getting older and they
And my
needed
dad didn't want
jobs.
them in the mine, so
And
we
the
moved
mother
to
didn't
Denver.
want them in the mine.
Well, Pa and Mom both did.
I don't know about that, but that's what the boys told me.
Yeah.
Dad didn't
And I'll never forget the train we come down was an old-fashioned train, and to flush the water, you had to pull the chain.
Well, now Frank already was in the mine, wasn't he?
He came down here to Denver, and they went to work in that coal mine out in Morrison that had that cave in, and that was the end of the line there, and he got out of it. You know,
You know, Johnny, there's still a coal mine north of Denver.
up where?
North of Denver, there's still a coal mine.
Yeah, on the Valley Highway. I don't know if that's owned by the Washington, because they're still pulling coal out of there. Yeah. There's several mines up that way, Bart.
As deep as the dungeon way down in the mine. Sing it, baby.
You know, I'll tell you something else, buddy, you won't believe. And my brother up at Grand Lake Scott, the candlestick that my dad used before they went in the carbide. The candlestick holder, which all it held was a candle. It had a point on this end, had a loop where the candle went down, and had a handle on here, and they ram it into those cribbings so they'd have light. He worked by candlelight.
What did you do with that candlestick?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do with that candlestick? Did
My
you ever
brother
have a
Don's
chance
got
to?
it in Grand Lake.
Really?
I wish I could steal it.
Can you get it?
I wish I could.
No, I wish you could too.
It's a straight hook with a point on it and a loop where the candle went down, and then they had a handle here. And Dad, I still remember, Dad explained it to me. Ram that thing in there, and they'd work by candlelight.
Oh my gosh, now that would
Right,
be a good
and
thing.
they had a hook on this side, and they put it on their cap.
Carbide, you know.
That was after the candlelight,
Yeah,
way after.
I know. I know they had something that on their heads that was something besides candlelight, but I don't know what it was.
And
Carbide.
on those carbide lamps, they had a
Yeah.
little square deal there where
Yeah,
they'd hook
right.
their light right on there.
Yeah.
The Argo Tunnel. You know the Argo Tunnel?
Yeah.
At Argo Springs.
Yeah.
The weather is taking off the lettering. That tunnel goes from Idaho Springs clean into Central City. It was a very, very productive tunnel, and they're leaving it go to hell. That is it's a history talking point. But they left to go.
How can I get it?
Well, you come right up the highway, and if you don't know what it is, you say, hell, it's an old mine.
But I'm going to go see it.
It's an old mine, but it isn't. It's the Argo Tunnel. A-R-G-O. I still remember the lettering.
Hey, that's what Mike steals, these signs.
Well, the sign's gone. The weather is taking the sign off of it. But the tunnels from that Argo go all the way well, then I'll do something else with Buddy. She may not like it. And I'll take her from Idaho Springs over the Trough Road up to Central City.
Why? That just sounds good.
She won't forget it, I'll tell you. That's where the ore cars used to come down that road to get down.
Could you pick
Right,
us up a little
Hey,
Hey,
ore
you know
car?
what Mike was trying to pick up Belle, a little old car.
One of those ore cars.
Ore car, yeah. Ore car.
Oh, God.
And he had him a man to bring him the thing in, you know, a coal mining car. Some of the bitch got sick and couldn't go put it down the
Have
yard.
you ever been up Central City?
Yeah.
Have you been over there where the
We
Glory
went to
Hole is?
Little America, but we never went to the Glory
Did you
Hole.
go down the Glory Hole?
No, we went up Little America, where you told us to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had
But right up Central City, up that you remember where the Glory Hole is?
Little America, where it's the old
We were going
abandoned.
to do that, and Mike got sick because we went up where the high places were first.
Where in the hell's the Glory Hole?
That's right out of Central City where the chain of mines was mining all that damn,
Right.
oh, God, I can't think of it.
Bill and Mike both got sick.
No,
And I was
no,
down
thank
there.
you. Thank
Boy, that is really...
you. Yeah, the chain of mines which went broke because they
And
couldn't
about
get enough
beans.
production out of there. That is a hole, that is a
Give
hole.
a load of beans.
Your beans.
Give him some beans and a plate.
No, this is just like this.
Don't have to give him a plate.
You don't eat the rest of them?
So you can have one or two.
Well, Jesus Christ, I thought I might have more than that.
Here, give me, here's my plate.
Here's your plate.
I'll be
Feed him
damned.
all. From
Now, Johnny, when we went up to Little America, you told me
Yeah,
I had
right
to
above,
Okay, that was the most
Wallace.
exciting. Okay, right before you get to St. Mary's Glacier is where we turned up.
Yeah.
Well, we just went up there. And
I might should have been here
oh,
longer.
that was such a nice place.
He would have left. He could have asked you more.
Well, we can't leave early because I gotta sing in church. I'm singing in the choir.
Now,
What are you going to say? Tell me what you sing in the choir. What choir?
Oh,
Catholic choir. You don't even recognize the song.
Oh, dear.
well, I'm not Latin, no.
No, they're not in Latin, but
What do
you
you
don't.
sing
Glory to
then?
God on the highest, that's all it is about repeating
Glory
about
to
4
God
times.
high.
Yeah, and
How
then,
do you sing that? Let me hear us sing that.
oh, hell, I don't know.
Oh, come on now. I'll tell you,
No,
if I had to
and
sing
then,
the choir in the Baptist church, I'd sing
Uh-oh,
Glory.
they are Baptist
Glory.
church. How about Kumbaya?
Kumbaya don't rock.
That is, it's an old song from Africa. The Kumbaya, someone's lost. Kumbaya, someone's
That's
lost.
lost by the way.
Kumbaya, and then it goes on. It's got about. Well, you can add any sentence you want to it as long as you end with Kumbaya. And then the one that we are trying to learn, which is Latin, which I'll admit I will never learn, is the Ave Maria. There's a soprano, an alto, a
That's
tenor,
beautiful.
and then a bass that
Why
comes in.
can't you learn that one?
Well, I can't read Latin.
Ave
No, Johnny, I would think you could.
Is that this one?
That is
Ave
such a beautiful tone.
It is, Bart, and then see the
What
soprano
else
start,
is
and
it
then it
to
comes right down.
besides the
And after they go into the next 2 lines, then the bass comes in, and then they blend
Okay, now say other words. Now you sing.
Well, I didn't know.
And you singing your Latin words.
Yeah, but I want him to sing like he's going to sing it tomorrow at church.
I wish I knew, Bill. I'll tell you the truth.
Well, you
tell
don't sing it at church if you don't know
Tell
the
me.
words to it.
I rely on that organist. When she hits the low note, I stay
Okay, then
right
you
with her.
just say,
Well, you don't have an organist here. We didn't. So
Well, I'll tell you what.
What words are you going to say
One
then?
organist, come on.
What words are you going to say?
Ave Maria, and then what's the? No.
You sit there saying the tune, or you say the words. Ave Maria. You can't just keep
No,
sitting
it's
there saying Ave Maria.
No, then there's a whole bunch with
I've heard
Ovid
John
for
sing it.
Novus,
You've heard God sing.
and then
Oh,
Brother John.
he's going to be in
God,
that
God.
choir. He's going to
you
sing
ain't
with them.
heard him yet.
Now, Johnny, maybe
Come to
you,
Mergo is another one that's rough.
Johnny, you might do like I do when people are singing the Star Spangled Banner, and I can't sing now.
Hum it.
Ba-ba.
I told you we're making
Ba-ba-ba.
Star Spangled Banner isn't as bad as, what's that other one that goes so
Oh,
high?
you say the,
God bless America.
Let's see.
you know, we chant with the priest, and when he says Ave,
What's the national
we
anthem?
have the same word.
That is
God
God
bless
bless
America.
We have flat out the word,
Oh, say,
Ave.
can you see? Yeah, is that Star Spangled Banner? That goes up so high that you can't possibly get up there.
Oh,
But you're not one World Series.
But there's
You
more
had
to it.
And you can't mistake
Feliciano.
a
You
Uh-huh.
had Feliciano sing.
Yeah.
God, I loved
Ave in
it.
Latin.
Maria.
People just raised
Maria
hell.
is,
But I just loved the way he did it.
Why did they raise hell?
Because it was different.
Ove pro nobis.
And now I think it's a poor song anyway, you know.
It's terrible.
Yeah. Feliciano just made it completely different.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I've heard more women
Jesus,
sing it,
Jesus.
and they can't get up that high,
Jesus.
and so they kind of
Jesus,
either
that
fade
word,
away or
Jesus.
break away or something, and they ruin the
That's-
whole
that's
thing.
murder when you don't know the name.
Because they start out in the first place, they
So
start
I
out
really
too
don't sing it.
high.
Don't even try to hum it when it goes through.
Or I used to, Johnny used to sing about bringing in the sheep.
Bringing in
Sheaves.
the sheaves.
I always thought they
Bringing
said
in the
sheep.
sheaves, bringing in
Sheaves.
the
Shall we
sheaves.
rejoice?
And I
Bringing
wondered,
in
why
the
should
sheaves.
anybody be rejoicing bringing in the sheep?
Bringing the sheaves, we shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. Okay, and then there's the one about
in the morning, sowing
Sowing
seeds
seeds
of gladness, sowing in the
rejoicing.
midday and the early morn. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. We shall be rejoicing, bringing in the sheep.
Jesus Christ, what a time we have with her.
What'd you tell her? That the organist is deaf?
She's an old sister.
Yeah, and she's
Come
deaf.
on, she's half thief.
That
Christ,
must be
what a mess
something.
we
But you
have.
realize I've never heard any of this.
Well, I wish I'd have known. I'd have brought over the tape and then I heard the practice. The
That
other
would
night.
have been good, man. If they come for dinner tomorrow, you'll hear it.
If they come for dinner, we can still run to Idaho Springs and
John will be home at 11:30 tomorrow.
We
Find
went to
out if
Idaho
you're going to
Springs already
dinner
this
before 11:30, and he'll call you home. I'll call you.
I
We
won't
can
even
find
be
out by then.
out of bed for 11:30.
I think those Johnny, the Idaho Springs deal,
Yeah.
it'd be better if they forget.
Forget it.
We went to Idaho Springs Tuesday.
well, if you win right up
We walked up and down the
Springs.
streets of Idaho Springs for
All right.
4 hours.
before
Didn't
you
you
got
see the
into
Argo Tunnel?
the
Yeah.
proper town of Idaho Springs, right over there that looks like an old mine that's going
I
apart.
saw
That's
that.
the Argo Tunnel. That is the
saw that.
one.
We spent 4 hours in Idaho Springs. We know it from the
Oh, what
bottom to the
about
top.
back
No, then they don't wanna
from
take
that, Virginia?
They don't want to go there.
And when I speak, Johnny, you ought to do like Nat does.
She's a dick.
This has to happen all week long to me. All of a sudden, he hears a voice from the closet and he says, "Hell," he says, "I'm pissed off at you."
I don't get it.
Oh, he was squawking about how things were
Okay,
going
tell it over
lousy.
again.
He was squawking how things were going lousy all week. So I figured he walked the beach line and he kept thinking of what went wrong all week. So he spread his arms and says, "Good Lord, what in the hell have I done to you that things went so wrong all week long?" And the voice in the clouds answered, "I'm pissed off at you."
The woman, by the way, was nude. They were lying on this water bed, and the girl raises up, and she says, "Dear, either this bed is leaking, or one of us has a problem."